All right. What's up, man? Coach
What's
Dev
going on?
coming live to you. How you doing, Dr. Obari? Thanks for joining me today.
Of course, man. I appreciate you having me, bro.
Hey, for everyone tuning in and locked in, well, when you do get in, Dr. Obari was kind enough to bless my show for a little bit and have a discussion on me as far, with me as far as something from my perspective as in today, um, how can you not have mental illness in today's society, right? So, with some of the things that's been happening in the media today, as far as the Tyree Nichols case, and seeing the same thing happen in the media over and over and over again, man. You know, with a lot of work that I do, I see the impact that it's having on these kids, right, Dr. Obari? And a lot of people think these kids are missing it and that they're insensitive to what's going on, but they kind of develop their own way of like dealing with the trauma that they're seeing. You know what I mean? And it's weird to sit back and watch, man, because you want to say like these kids, a lot of these kids are misbehaving, but a lot of our kids were dealing with things, man, that adults don't even know how to deal with and process. You know what I mean? So, and then once that happened with our kids, man, they start to go into a space where, they start to deal with behavior issues, and you see them. A lot of them, when they're bored. My concern, man, is when this label of ADHD, right? That some of the things you see with a lot of the kids in the school system, where just because their curriculum can't catch their attention the way that that teachers and staff would like, administrators would like, that labeled as attention deficit, when really a lot of them are just bored. You know what I'm saying? And uninterested. So today's live, man, is going to be a little bit around that, just discussing a little bit of everything that's involved with what we're seeing. How that impacts you, what kind of mindset that puts you in. How that stuff plays on anxiety, how it plays on depression, how it plays on hopelessness, for not just the kids that are seeing this stuff unfolding you, but a lot of adults too. You know what I mean? So I wanted to give them a second to introduce yourself, Dr. Obari. Tell the folks that are following us, a little bit of what you do. What you do out there in Chicago. Like I said, I've been following you for a while, man. Your work is amazing. You got your boots to the ground out there. We know with this mental illness in this community, advocating. So let's go, man. What exactly is a community psychologist?
True. Well, first, thank you for the invitation, man, for your work too, man. I just know there's a lot of people out here using the moment, the mental health moment, to get views and likes. You know what I'm saying? Just to do this part, to do the podcasting part, but not doing the work part. Right. So what I appreciate about what you're doing is actually using your story, the information you gather, and to connect with young people, to give information back to people, and to do the same thing. You got your boots on the ground out there too. We got enough people talking about it, but we need people out here doing it. So I appreciate you being one of those soldiers out there for us.
Yeah, thank you for that, man. Thank you.
Community psychology. So community psychology is a field of study. So I use the word community psychology because part of my mission is to do work that is impactful in the community as we know it, to be more grassroots, to not wait for people to come to the office, sitting in a chair and get diagnosed and talk about your, so I want to be out where people are giving medicine in ways that is appealing and accessible to them. So that's the one aspect of my work as a community psychologist. But it's a field, it's an actual field. It's a field of study. It was born out of sort of how we consider the traditional psychology, counseling, therapy, clinical psychology being mostly individual based. So you do one-on-one therapy, treatment, assessments, and then those folks in the field that was like, if I just keep taking one person out of a system, doing the best I can to get them to a better place, and then put them back into a broken system, then we just gonna keep cycling. We're gonna be spinning our wheels. And so community psychology was born out of a group of mental health people that wanted to look at systems change, almost like sociology, understanding the levels of environments that people are interacting with, and not just having an individual level analysis. And so a lot of my work, because I was trained with that in mind, and I did both. I had a clinical and a community psychology degree. I was at Georgia State in Atlanta. They have a few programs in the country that have a dual program in clinical and community. And so the community part really just gives me a lens where I can think about, what I'm saying, how is a prison system impacting individual functioning? How's the economic system? How are these school systems, politics, those kind of larger macro level value systems, principles, operation processes, those we operate within a context. And if my medicine just goes to help you think better, and you know what I'm saying, just get your individual mindfulness practices right, or your yoga, your breathing. If I can get your individual practice right, but the system is still sick, then we're not going to do the deep healing that we need. And so a lot of my work just integrates all of that. Just looking at all the different levels. I don't do a lot of individual therapy. Every once in a while, I'll pick up a client, but it's just not an efficient enough a way to deal with the amount of pain that we're dealing with.
Yeah, I was about to ask you that, man, because that's one of the things that we're running. That's one of the obstacles that I see, right, with a lot of kids that I work with, is that waiting list, man, for therapy.
The waiting list is a real thing. There's a shortage all over the country. So I believe that the moment is kind of disingenuous, because we saying go to therapy, but then we reduce the stigma, we get people comfortable, and then they get stuck in the system of trying to figure out how to get my insurance. They're trying to find somebody Black, trying to find somebody relevant. All of the therapists are trained in order to get the licenses and accreditations. We got to go through white people systems to learn some European philosophy about what healing look like. And so all of our healing modalities and treatment plans are shaped by a healing, you know what I'm saying, understanding that is not of our own. And so there's a shortage. And when you do find a therapist, you got to be careful if that therapist might be doing harm. They might be trying to get you to like cope and manage with some shit that ain't even good for you.
That's facts, bro.
You should go back to work, go back to school to be a more functioning cog in a broken system is not good therapy. That's just, you might feel better and still not be more powerful. So all of these things are just complicated layers of what we need to be introducing to the community, as we're saying, take care of yourself, do self-care, go to therapy, all that kind of stuff is good. But it's got caveats. Like, you got to be thinking about the culture, context, and the historical sort of philosophies that are underpinning all of the things that we understand about this field.
That's facts, man. That's it's also scary, right? Like what you're saying.
Yeah.
Eye-opening, right? And that's where we are in life. But it's scary too, man, because it makes you realize it's like a pandemic. This is a pandemic of a mental health pandemic, a mental illness pandemic, where like a lot of people are dealing with these things. A lot of kids are dealing with some major losses, man, and they don't have a place to be able to express that stuff. And a lot of people that I deal with now, man, that's the one good thing about people talking about it now, is right. You see people now more comfortable with going to talk to a therapist, with the option of going to talk to a therapist, right? But then they'll find one therapist where it completely turns them off, right? Which happens, right? Or now they're in a space now where they want the help, but they can't get the help. You're meeting people that charging you $150 just to get on the platform to find good therapy.
That's right.
You know what I mean? So it's just like, I'm getting afraid, man, because it's like we're setting people up to fail, especially our people, right? Because now, we have this conversation around mental health and mental illness for a while. And, like I said, that's big for especially a lot of Black men to get to a point where they're like, all right, let's go. And they're going to meet that one therapist. In my experience, my therapist is a white woman, right? I love her, right? But it took me a while to find her, right? But then I had a Black man who made me feel 10 times worse than I felt on myself, just, dealing with him. So I understand, like, I see what's going on, man, but it's scary to me. And that's why I'm kind of like trying to do my best to get attention and get people to come in there and come into this field, right? Because especially even if it's just a counselor in school, you know what I'm saying? Even if it's a therapist, getting in a space where somebody can talk, especially one of these kids can kind of have a space to release, how to deal with it on an academic purpose, how to deal with that from a human perspective. And you said something, man, as far as like the, a lot of stuff you do is around the African origin of psychology, right? Within that space. And my uncle, man, he sent me this book like last year, bro, and I just cracked it open to the point where I just realized that psychology, man, it does impact, like, it. For me being African American, for my Asian counterpart, for my white brother, like, it's completely different. The way we're supposed to think, the way we process things is totally different. And just cracking the book open, man, it fueled my hunger, bro.
Which book was it?
The African Origins of Black Psychology. And it's it's in a space where, like, yes, I see what's going on here in the Western culture as far as mental health and mental illness, right? And my granddad, he was a psychiatrist, and he graduated from the University of Maryland. I never met him, but I've heard he had a great impact, right? So, but I'm I'm looking at some of the practices here that we have in the States. I'm looking at some of the old practices that we're doing. I'm looking at things as far as like what we actually are, right? And who we actually are as people. And I found, man, that a lot of this stuff goes back to you not being who you are, not knowing who you are, being in the space, and not being able to figure out comfortably who you are. So, you're right where it comes to, just the treatment of, we have to not only get good therapists in it, but we have to have therapists that people can relate to on every level. Like I said, my therapist is a young white lady, but she's great. On a cultural level, she can relate to me. Some of the things and on the other side of it. But no, man, like, I see what you're saying. I ain't mean to rant, but you caught me there. Yeah. So like right now, man, like you're out of Chicago, right?
Yes, sir.
So just like I'm from Baltimore, man. So just with the murder cases and the things that we hear that happens in the communities in our urban areas, like just with our two cities alone, bro, that's scary. It's mind blowing. To me, it puts out there, man, like, hey, whatever systems that they say exist, man, it's working, and it's working pretty well. You know what I'm saying? Like when you look at what's happening, as far as the jails, you look at the curriculum that's being taught. You look around at certain things as far as Florida not allowing things, as far as African American studies. You start to question like, no, like we're not in different times here. But my thing, bro, is like, do you feel like that? Like, how is this repairable?
Is it absolutely is repairable? It ain't gonna be magic though.
Yeah.
It ain't gonna be time. It ain't gonna happen. It ain't gonna just happen. Right. To repair it will take deliberate, intentional things to fix the specific problems that are in place. And so part of it is analysis. If we don't understand the problem, it won't be repaired. We'll learn to walk with a limp. Right, we would just normalize the trauma. We would just be like, because we tough, we tough folks, and so we can live with a certain amount of burden and still be fresh. Right, we still look good, we still create, we still brilliant, but it ain't who we supposed to be. Like we ain't operating at our full capacity, and if we don't remember that, and if we don't have ways to teach the young people, no, you deserve better than this. You know what I'm saying? Like then you won't even engage in the process of repair. So it is repairable, but we got too many people comfortable with the sickness because it tastes good and it look good and somebody making money off of it, and some people think that they winning. The sickness is so deep that we don't even recognize it. Their time, we're talking about men specifically, they're men that think they're winning and don't realize that they're losing. And so now how you go? And I'm like, come on, bro, let's fight. Let's get organized. They're like, for what? Like, I'm good. I'm chilling.
Right. I'm eating good. I ain't got nothing to worry about. I'm comfortable.
This will be true in I work in prisons and they're comfortable, right? I'm like, you literally can't. Some other man telling you when to go to sleep, and you chilling, like you okay with that? And I'll go on with that. I lead with your community under attack. If you don't care about it for yourself, that's fine. I ain't gonna try to convince you you're a grown ass man. But like they going for your little nieces and nephews. They going for your kids. They going for your little cousins. And if you telling me you don't give a fuck that there's a system designed to attack your little babies, and you shrugging your shoulders, I don't know what to tell you. Like that's the end of this conversation. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But there's a lot of complacency. There's apathy. There's fear. There's stuff that we haven't really dealt with, particularly as men. I would argue as Black people in general, to be able to get over the realization that we under attack, that we sick, to even have the conversation about how to engage in repair. And then once we do that, we got to have this similar enough analysis to think about what the problems are. Some people saying, that we need to be in closer proximity to white people, and that's what the healing will look like. No, we need to repair the hood. That means take the kids out and bust them out to another neighborhood. And then, like, so it's just all these things that get in the way of repair. But it's absolutely possible, man. We can do whatever we want, put our mind to it. If we get collective and organized and, getting our right mind, but like, it ain't gonna happen on accident.
No, I understand. I think the part I don't get discouraged with the work. I sit around and I realize especially when I'm at work, man, and when I'm coaching and one of my kids are dealing with.
I forgot we just had an audience. There's people here listening.
Yeah.
Somebody's talking about. Says the question that popped up. What is your algorithm?
What is your algorithm to shed more realness on the mental health epidemic?
what is your algorithm? That's the main thing about social media automatically.
I did too instantly.
Which is funny how our brains are trained. But that's part of, I mean, I think how I'm understanding what you're asking about is what is the process of creating wider impact of like sharing
I'll go with
messages,
that.
right?
I think so.
And that's a tough, it's a tough question because those of us that I know in my line of work in radical movements that have, you know what I'm saying, their head on the right place, their heart spirit in the right place, a lot of them aren't interested in the attention, the trinkets, the process of becoming a thing. I'm not like, I don't want to be a thing right now. I don't want to
Yeah,
be
I feel you.
rich, famous. I don't want to be none of that. Like I don't
Right.
want to be the go-to nothing.
Yeah.
If I started winning awards, if America started giving me awards, I'm gonna start to be like something wrong. Like I've changed course. If I'm safe enough to be put on a platform that everybody could be exposed to this message, then that must mean that something has been compromised about my message in a way that I wouldn't be comfortable with.
Right,
so that's the dilemma for me, is that like, and I'm not for like the if I can only save one kid kind of approach either. Like I'm not, like I know we got to think about impact. We got to have reach. We got to make sure, because we got enemies that saying, while we saying impact one at a time, they saying let me get 1 million of them at a time, and distort them and confuse them and hurt them. And so those of us that are healers have to think about impact. We got to think about algorithm. We got to think about reach. It's just the processes of getting into those systems where people have mass attention. Those processes are very, very well organized, and they protect themselves in a way that it's hard to get through without watering your stuff down, without putting on the. I spoke at a graduation at a high school and a juvenile detention center 2 days ago. As soon as I came off, I went up, talking about, what we need to do as a people, blah, blah, blah. Everybody's clapping, and some of us parents stood up, like, it was really into it. And one of the top administrators of that center, a Black woman, came up to me right after. She didn't say nothing. She didn't say thanks for coming. She didn't say I appreciate you. First thing she said was, next time you should put a suit and a tie on when you speak to these kids.
Are you serious, man?
I think she said, so there's a pressure to conform, to assimilate, to say the right things, and to, play this monkey game in order to get to those platforms where you're on TV and you got all these followers. But those the people that the people that want that are usually the kind of people that aren't talking about what she asked about, the realness of the mental health epidemic. And nobody talk about that at that level. We talk, it's too dangerous, because there's a real actual danger of Black people finding out who we are, of stepping into our rightful place. The whole system, turns on its head. So
that's facts. And you, like, what you're speaking on, bro. Like, I had to think, like, a part of me getting to a place to talk about some of the things I talk about and how I talk about it. Exactly, I struggle with it because of some of the things that you said. Mm-hmm. Some of the stuff that we speak on, man, is dangerous. You know what I'm saying? And historically, if, when you start waking people up, man, in that way and teaching them how to, you see what happens.
That's right.
With Kanye West and all these different places. So it's whether you agree with his argument or not, there's a systematic strategy here that once you start getting to a point of educating to this point, it gets scary, right? Yeah. So the beauty, I understand. You're right. I do exactly. I understand. I know how you teach and how you speak. That's Raquel. She's I do a Twitch show with her over on Twitch every Tuesday called The Safe Space. Speaking on mental health and mental illness. She did a few panels that I was on, and I've been on speaking on the mental health and mental illness from the personal, perspective. Nice. And getting in the space, man. I'm building this platform off of me and talking about some of the things that I went through with a Black male dealing with mental illness, and not finding out until I was 35 when I was actually dealing with. After I had my mental break, like all of that, like my bipolar disorder was like, that impacts me, right? But it's not the worst thing that I've dealt with. That's not my struggle. My struggle is the systems that's been in place that every other person struggles with. The obstacles that everybody else struggles with are the same things that I struggle with. Yeah. It makes it a little tougher because of the mental illnesses, man. But me coming from Baltimore and moving from Baltimore to Montgomery County and switching school systems and all, Baltimore to coming to the 5th richest county in the nation, although they have these programs in place to kind of support you, something still happens in that transition with the child. You know what I mean? Like, so, I was molested when I was, when I was around 8, so, I was raised by my mom. My dad wasn't really around. So I had the typical struggles of a male growing up how I grew up. It's not the bipolar disorder. That's just an explanation. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know what I mean? So it's, for me, bro, it's scary. Like I was telling you earlier, it's scary, man, because my motivation for what I do, like I used to say that I hated my passion, right? And I don't want people to get the wrong message when I say that. I hate the passion, man, because some of the things that I still struggle with, these kids are still struggling with plus more. I hate the passion because I can look into another brother's face and see his pain or feel whatever he's dealing with without him saying two words. You know what I'm saying? Like, so that's the part of it that I hate, man. But there's a reason why I got to this point. It's not the bipolar disorder. I didn't want to kill myself because of the bipolar disorder. So it got to a space where, when I sit around, I look, man, I'm disturbed by a lot of the things that I see. You know what I'm saying? With society, let's take in, man, you see things you want to forget growing up, how I grew up, right? And then you also continue, to get into a space where you see other people suffering and a lot of your friends around you suffering in different ways. It kind of puts you in a space of hopelessness, right? Or it puts you in an unhealthy space of motivation to get or to go achieve whatever it is you think, whatever tangible impact you can create to kind of, but you don't focus on the spiritual side of it, right? But when you're in a space like that, man, and you're dealing with, the struggles of doubt, you're dealing with the struggles of failure, right? And then you deal with the sense of hopelessness, and then you wake up in the morning and your homeboy just got shot, or his cousin just got shot, or you see somebody getting robbed. It puts you in a natural space of anxiety, right? And then we talk about it as it's a rare thing. You know what I'm saying? Like I say all the time, this stigma shouldn't exist at this point because so many people suffer with it. But if this stigma is still the way that it is, then everybody's still clueless. Actually, to what mental illness is, right? So I go into the perspective of saying, man, like I look at the violence in the hood and things like that in the space where it's just like, man, this stuff is not just the hood anymore, man. Like this stuff, you don't have to be from the hood. You don't have to have a clique. You don't have to experience the same things that everybody else is experiencing, right? So it concerns me, man, because my entire life I've lived with the fear, right? Not knowing where this fear came from. I've literally celebrated every birthday from 18, 25, 30, 40. And I wasn't digging and diving in the streets like that to be as the things that I've seen, the things that have happened to my friends, the things that have happened to the people that I'm associated with. It has you in a sense of fear, man. Where now you're responding and you're harder than you have to be, right? Now, although you want to relate to somebody, you want to talk to somebody, you don't know this person, you don't know who they know. So now you have to be in a space of let me feel you out first. That's not natural. That really isn't natural, right? So, with me having to see the things that I've seen, I'm starting to understand, like, okay, there's a reason for everything. There's a reason why, like some of the somatic responses of the brain when you're dealing with anxiety, right? It's no book on how it's going to look for the average person. My thing, man, before I got diagnosed with bipolar disorder, I went for years with dealing with these extreme emotions and not knowing what they were. Like not understanding what sadness really was. Not understanding what overwhelm felt like, and it was okay to feel that. You know what I'm saying? So, it puts me in a space, man, like when I take things and I see things like the Tyree Nichols case, with the video going around all weekend, I try my best not to, I didn't look at the video yet, right? But you see the conversations coming around and you hear different opinions on it. And the one thing I'm thinking about, man, is that I've seen this stuff all my life, right? But I'm worried about now what these kids are getting from that when they see this on TV. What kind of fears are putting in their mind? What kind of responses is it going to generate for them down the line when they encounter somebody, in a situation like this? And what does that look like for them, as far as mentally? There's no peace there. You know what I'm saying? Like, so you've seen it over and over again now, to the point where you don't have to ask questions as what are we dealing with? Like, we know what we're dealing with, right? And in my community that I live in now and I work with is Montgomery County. So I have a lot of Black and Hispanic families that I work with, that I have relationships with. And, you see like the support out there for the Hispanic culture, not saying that, it was not rightfully so, right? Because the Hispanic folks support the things that they have going on as far as their family. They show up to events. They go, they do these things to kind of get to a space where they support different things for their kids in the community, right? On the other side of it, I've seen where, we have a community service or outreach and nobody shows up because it's the Black community, right? So how do you expect anything to work when you're getting that kind of response in two different scenarios, right? So then you wonder why the money goes in one direction and not the other. Well, you got to follow the data. If you have the support here, you're not going to waste the money here on those who might show up or those who might buy interest. But to me, it's concerning now because you're watching these kids deal with the Tyree Nichols situation. You're watching these kids deal with the gang violence. I'm watching these kids go into a school and come back and tell me every day, like, coach, they're not teaching me what I need to know. These are middle school kids. You know what I'm saying? Like, so these kids are to the point where they're starting to rebel. They don't even realize they're being rebellious, right? But they're not. What they're saying, what they're rebelling about, if they knew how to articulate it, the type of stubbornness that this generation coming up has, man, they can do wonders in this space of making it, you know what I'm saying? But I do feel like now we're at a space where we're battling bigger entities. You know what I'm saying? Like, and that's what a space where I love what you told when you talk about spirituality, because it takes you to a mindset of taking it away from anything tangible, right? And it puts you in a space of kind of getting back to living out in a space outside of that matrix where, okay, you want this is your goal, this is your purpose, but try to create something in this space where if you don't get this bag, if you don't get this goal, that like how else can you be happy with, with the work that you've done? Like you said earlier, I don't want to get paid for any of the things that I do right here. I don't want my biggest fear is becoming the face of mental illness or mental health for Black men. You know what I'm saying? But I do want to build something, man, where my kids can kind of, not my kids that I gave birth to, but the kids that need my assistance or can benefit from, and it's hard work, bro. And I don't make a lot of money, so I understand why we don't have a lot of people diving into this thing. Where you're just like, no, man, like, fuck the money. Like, everybody's wait a minute. Like, you hear what this kid just said? This kid just said life, because life is hard. You know what I'm saying? Like, did you not see this elementary school kid commit suicide? Are you billions of men that are losing their life to suicide all around this world. Like, we got to figure something out, because at this rate, man, what we're dealing with in the mental health portion of it, right? What we're dealing with as far as systematic oppressions and jails and things like that, and child support even, right? We're dealing with, I guess, the LGBTQ community. I'm not speaking bad, I'm just speaking on, the impact of what's happening, right? And then you think about the amount of guys that get murdered, right? The men that we have in the spaces, man, like we're disappearing. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're disappearing in huge numbers, and it's I'm at a space, bro, where it's just like, man, like, I find myself where I have to calm myself down in conversation because I get too passionate, and people looking like, okay, like, maybe he don't. All right, he like his job, and I feel like you, man. Like, I don't want to do this stuff for recognition. I want you to help and pay attention. Come do something on the weekend. I want you to come coach a football team or something like that. I don't want you to praise me on my back and say, good job, man. Because these kids are seeing things that are putting them in a space where it's horrible, bro. So another rant. Let me go off of that space, right, and go into a space where a lot of things that we kind of exacerbate as a mental illness, right? And so just in mental illness alone, within a lot of the symptoms, you see, with a lot of symptoms, a lot of causes, you see things like the food and your diet has a huge impact on your mental health, right? What you consume mentally. How seeing crime and victimizations of that happens within your area. It could be anything as far as racism. It can be the neighborhood violence you see or encounter on your way home every day. You know what I'm saying? You raise the rig that you live next door to you, right? All these things have an issue, right? Violence being around these kids, drugs, racism, and you look at things from an addiction perspective, right? And I'm saying, like, these kids don't have a chance because addiction isn't just the drug anymore. You know what I'm saying? Like, your body responds the same way just off of pure addiction, right? So when I watch my 8-year-old and I take the tablet from him and I watch his response, experiment that I do, right? Because sometimes I do it just to, take it from him and kind of set the stone straight. But then I'm curious to see, like, if I just walk past him and snatch the iPad away from him, what type of response am I going to get? And not looking at it in a way of like, no, he's responding mad because I took something from him, but looking at the action of it, right? The part where he doesn't even recognize that he's going into a rage because he don't have it. And then you look at that and you hear some of the cases I'm familiar with as far as an addict killing one of each other because somebody took the last, little hit or whatever they had. The response to that is no different, right? When you watch somebody go through a dietary withdrawal from not having certain substances versus somebody having, let's say, a weed withdrawal, right? We can keep it on the side. You deal with the same symptomatic responses. You know what I'm saying? Like, so we're looking at a space where with addiction, I look at it from a space where addiction, man, is always tied to mental health and mental illness, right? Almost always, right? It's always something that you're in a space of. If you're addicted to your food, like you're not experiencing anything really differently physiologically than the person going through that addiction who's trying to give up that weed for the next 2 weeks. But nobody realizes that, right? And that's the scary part, man, because we're dealing with malnutrition and things like that, like and food deserts and throughout different states, different cities in the United States and different spaces, man. Like we really don't have the capacity to fight this right now. We really are like fighting to me, I feel like I'm fighting a dying war, right? But I'm fighting with all my energy. But when you look around and you actually see where we are, and you look at these little milestones, you're like, yeah, we're talking about it, man, but if we stay on this track, bro, we are you know what I mean? So that's one of my rants, man. So when you put that into space and you think about it, man, that's where for me I realize that's how much work that we have, how much more work we have to go, right? So we talked about the education system earlier, right? And getting to the education system, man, like I'm not an employee anymore of the school system, but I have been, and how I was made to feel as an employee, it wasn't allowing me to enjoy the real impact that I was making and as a teacher, right? And I felt like I was just created to do a dance. And in the role that I'm in now as a counselor, I feel that more impactful, right? And but as a teacher, man, as a former teacher and somebody who's working in the school system, man, when I look at the curriculum, bro, I'm scared. I'm worried because it goes back to a space of you really just sending your kid to go to school just for a babysitter most of the time. I had to explain while I was failing a kid when they showed up to my class 30% of the time and took one test. On me as a teacher to explain the lesson that I have to teach this kid in life that if he doesn't, it's not going to be people here passing you along. This is a systematic. This is a systematic response to. This is the response to what the system wants. They want you to not show good because they got that jail to prison pipeline. That jail to prison pipeline exists in the suburbs, bro. It exists in the cities, and it looks different. And like Montgomery County's jail to school to prison pipeline looks different from Baltimore City, right? But it yields the same results. And when we're putting this curriculum in front of the kid that's been in there since I've been in school, it may change the map just a little bit, right? But ultimately, when you're teaching the same things and you have the economy growing the way it do and changing the way it does, you have nature is still evolving the way that it does, and you're teaching it in a way of things have stopped. You're challenging science versus it becoming one with it and things like that. You're putting it in a space where you are really, putting in a space where we're dependent on the parents to kind of be the difference makers, right? But on the other side of it, where a lot of my kids come from single family, it's not a lot of my kids, a lot of the kids in the school population, they're coming from single parent households. We all know the stats of single parent households. We've been hearing it lately as far as what it looks like for the amount of men that are in prison raising a single woman impact, right? So it gets to a space, man, where you're seeing these things play out and you're trying your best to yell like how do you? It's hard for me to. You're watching it play out, man. You see the education system in a space where it's over 30 years old, right? So how can you teach these kids who are already naturally evolving, who are go online and seeing directly what they want and what they where they want to go, but there's no direction on how to get there. You know what I'm saying? Like, how do you navigate that as a therapist or as a psychiatrist and a community psychologist? How do you navigate these type of obstacles, man? How do you keep yourself grounded with some of the things that I'm talking about and what bothers me? Do you have the same concerns? Do you have similar concerns? Do you see the same things? And what is your fear as a community psychologist within the community? I said a lot.
No, that's cool. I'll respond to some of that. My interest in school reform is very personal because I got kids. I got 2 boys. And so I've had to experience how difficult it is to find a place that I trust that's going to take care of my boys so they can be safe, but also not being lied to over and over again. And the compromise that I have to make to put them in sort of the so-called better schools always means that I'm going to have to go back and check on what they're doing and undo some of the damage. There's no way around it, right? There's no way around just having to be an active parent in whatever school you send your kid to. But I know that how much work it takes for me as a parent to do it, that I'm afraid of what you just said, which is that, if I wasn't in place, like if I'm locked up, or if I'm not in the house, or because of the single parent, what I'm saying, if there's just one mother working and can't keep up with the homework, and had a conversation that I'm having with my sons after school, picking them up. Um, I grew up in a school. My father had us in, my parents had us in a African centered private school growing up. So my first introduction to school was cultural. We was learning about Malcolm X, Marcus Garvey, playing drums. I had a red, black, and green outfit on for the uniform, and so I loved school because school was affirming for me. Um, but then I had to go out. Then we moved. And my dad got a little bit of money, moved out to suburbs, and had to figure out how to play the school game in a different kind of way.
Yeah.
And so I've had both experiences, and I had both of my sons went to that same school that we went to as a kid. And they're still doing the same cultural stuff. They had their own pledge and singing songs and learning the African languages, but they weren't keeping up with the academics, right? So we had to make a tough decision to take them out and put them in another school, and then we had to have these talks with both of the boys, where they were doing the Pledge of Allegiance. And I remember the first time I found out, I had to tell when I found out, my son came home and I was pissed, and I said, "Boy, if you ever again in your life put your hand on your heart and pledge allegiance to the United States of America, we're gonna have some real problems, serious problems. You're gonna be in serious trouble, right?" And he was like, he's a kid, he's like, "But I'm gonna get in trouble at school. I don't want to be I don't want to be mischievous. I don't want to get, blackballed." And I said, if somebody come to you, right, if your teacher have a problem with my instruction, then tell her to call me, tell her to email me. That'll be my problem to deal with, not your problem. And he was like, "Well, mom on the same page. Had to call mom immediately. Call mom, like so we can give him the same message to protect him from the school system."
Yeah.
There was times he came home, but had a color in his time with Christopher Columbus face on it. Tore the bitch up, throw it in the garbage. Right? Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't.
Yeah.
And so I'm having these conversations where I see the programming, but then I get to undo it in real time to prepare him for playing this game that the school system is about. So you go there, you get the paper, you learn the discipline. There's stuff that you need to learn to be able to do, but that don't just take it all in. They're not God. There's a system that's broken. So that's my approach to the school system. I try to give that to any young people I get. I'll be in school saying the same thing. Had a conversation early on Monday. Some boys talking about, we were talking about the movement. How do we recreate a new Black Panther movement? It came from them. It was like this, all the stuff we're talking about. You're right, Doc. Let's just try to figure this out. And they say I don't have a good school mind. My grades are bad. So in those moments, it's important to distinguish the value of critical thinking, of study, of discipline, but it don't necessarily mean being good at school. Like, I love going to the rebels. Like, I love the troublemakers, because those are the ones that they less easy to get programmed.
I agree.
I can use them better to like make some shit happen. But those, if they get wrapped up in the boxes, they harder to push. You know what I'm saying? I love working with those young people. But I think it's important to give them that framework. That school ain't real. It's a money game. It's an open access to doors game. But like, real education has to do with affirming yourself, learning things that are beneficial, learning things that are practical, learning things that help you figure out who you are as a person and as a community. Those school is unable to do that. Ill-equipped, not prepared. They don't have the capacity. They don't know, right? So we have to do both. We got to go play the game, but then everything that I've learned as I got a PhD in white psychology, but I had to learn Black stuff on my own. I had to go into community. I had to read other stuff. I got initiated into a whole African spiritual system. I traveled back and forth to constantly. I had to do a whole nother education process to get to a place where I can do healing in a way that's actually impactful. So it's hard, right? But like, not impossible. None of it's impossible. There's people doing brilliant work. We don't know about each other. We're not connecting. We working, and everybody talking about the silos, but it's real. Like, we really working in sort of these small little underground cults that are not connected in a network of a system of organized advancement for it. But all of it exists. Everything that we want exists right now. As young people, doing amazing work is in arts and STEM and create amazing things using technology for its good. Some people, everything we got. There's brilliant schools that are doing amazing work all over this country. We got to support them. Right, there's a lot to complain about. We spend a lot of time talking about the mental health movement and the schools and the prisons. There's a lot that we can, we worried about. I'm afraid of, but there's also a lot of hope. And despite all of that, what we have been able to do, the brilliance that has manifested itself in lots of people and organizations, we got to support them. Right, talk about the music all we want, but if you ain't supporting the artists, just talking about real shit. You can talk about corporate. I mean, if you're not building businesses and supporting those businesses, like, the only thing that matters is what we're going to do, and having that been centered from a solid analysis of what, righteousness and what independent Black thought, what, what sovereignty looks like. We got to have values and principles around this stuff so that we can use our talent and intellect in a way that's beneficial to us and to our children. It's work, right? It's work, but like, it's possible. You know what I mean? So I'm not hopeless, right? I'm not hopeless. I'm clear about the war we in. I'm clear about what we up against. It's a David Goliath moment we in for sure. We're gonna lose a lot of people. We will continue to. But the fact that we having this conversation is a testament to the ancestral brilliance that still flows through our veins.
I agree, man.
They threw everything they could at us. They did everything they could to keep me and you from talking, connecting. From us having a right mind right now. They did everything. The same school system we talking about, we went through the motherfuckers, right?
Facts.
And here we are.
Right? Facts.
So all I mean is trying to figure out, what was it? What was the thing that made me me? What are those elements? I'm a product of environment, just like the kids that we worried about. They products of environment. What was my environment? What was the things that help protect and serve and create me? How can I reproduce those? How can I give those to my children, other children, so that we build on what we know works? We can do it, man. We can do it over and over again.
That's bad, but I like that, man. I love the optimism, man. Man, like I said, I can't thank you enough for having this conversation with me. It's been a topic, man, that I wanted to hop on, man. I wanted to have for a while, but you can't have these conversations with everybody. You know what I mean? Like, talking about just with speaking on the school system alone and European mental health versus African American mental health. These things can be inflaming this shit, but it has to be talked about and it has to be brought attention to it. Like you said, you can't care about somebody's life, what you're saying or not. You know what I'm saying? Like these are the obstacles that we have to overcome. These are the conversations that we have to have head on to kind of make the impact, right? So like with this, man, like let me ask you a question. With coming from the mindset that you have around European mental health, and how do you feel about the medication, especially for our kids, as far as like ADHD and autism? You know what I'm saying? Like I'm saying some things about autism, man, that I never knew existed with some of these kids. Man, some of these kids are brilliant, and it looks like they have a superpower sometimes. You know what I'm saying? So, like medication-wise, like, what do you feel? Like, do you feel like it suppresses the kid? Do you feel like it gives it's needed at some point, or do you feel like it's just, it's a combination of both?
I mean, I'm for combinations for sure. Gotta have balance. Needed is strong for me. I think it can be helpful. I've seen it be useful for people to get them over a hump, to get to a place where they can, find other ways to stay afloat. But my position on medication is similar to my position on just pills in general, right? Like if you got blood pressure problems, they will give you a pill to make more money off of the so-called cure, which is really just keeps you dependent on the pill. So I want us to expand what we consider medicine. When we say, what do you think about medication? Our brains have been trained to think a specific way about what medication looks like. But our understanding of medication historically as a people has always been much more broader than just a chemical produced pill. Medication includes plants and herbs and breath and movement and art and culture, like all of that's medication. And we need to value those things and understand that science of how to use plants, how to use breath, how to use movements to do those things that medications are designed to do in a worse way. They're not even as effective as what we have learned from what herbs and plants can do. Diet.
I agree, man.
Right. So that has to be the medication that we prioritize, and we need to have regimens on that, right? And
Yeah.
that you use every day, 3 times a day, apple a day is like the doctor used to say, like those things. But we've lost that science. Like we've lost understanding what is it that can help. If I'm trying to get a young person to focus or to sleep or to boost their dopamine, like what are some natural things that exist on the planet? Like everything that we need, it already exists.
Yeah.
And there's easy fixes that cause new problems that got different side effects. And those things are part of a capital machine, not a healing machine. And so we got to be able to distinguish what is real medication and what is, just something to help you continue to survive in a way that somebody else has benefited from. So all of that is just expanding the notions, like really just wrestling with the language we use and what we were taught about, what is necessary. So that's why I stuck with. That's why when you say what we need, there's a program to make us think that we need a thing. You need money. You need to go to school. You need to get degrees. And once you put that in somebody's brain, they need medicine, they need therapy, and that therapy or that medicine or that education is pigeonholed in a very specific, narrow kind of way. That's how you keep people enslaved, right? That's how you keep people dependent on systems, because then the expertise always has to come outside of you and your people, your community. And then, so you're always making money to give it away, and then we stuck, right? So my position on medication is that, I'm for medicine. I just think that we need to define it on our own terms, and with everything else, wrestle ourselves away from depending on somebody else's definition of a thing and the way that it is commodified against our benefit.
Man, I appreciate that one, bro. And man, everything, especially touching on the holistic health approach of it, man, I think that it has to be a balance. I didn't with my when I was on Western medication, man, the dependency that I developed, especially medication, it was worth it. That was that intensified my emotions attached to bipolar 10 times worse than I initially started. So that had me. My uncle, man, he lives in South Africa, and he does things from a holistic health approach, right? And trying out some of the things that he suggested is where I started to see my real progress. But no, the medication, the Western medication that I took, the psychology medication, it allowed me to get to a point mentally where I wasn't overwhelmed by the thoughts and the emotions that I was dealing with. That was so bombarding at that moment, right? But then there became a time where once I was able to function in what felt normal again, I didn't feel as productive because that medication makes you downshift a couple of things. Right? So, I think for me, man, just figuring out that fine balance and how to make this thing work, but it goes back to a lot of things that I wasn't taught in therapy or what I wasn't taught in PHP, which is the holistic side of it, which is get out there and get some of that vitamin D to get that sunlight on the hike, take your feet off and walk through the grass with your dogs and things like that. Those are things that's not talked about enough, man. But no, man, Sunday night, I don't want to hold you any more time. Thank you, Dr. Obari, for blessing my spirit.
No, thank you. I appreciate you and your work, and we're going to continue to connect and build and exchange. Like, this ain't no one-time thing, so make sure we stay connected on this.
No doubt, Dr. Obari, man. Well, you go ahead, man. You have a good night, bro. I'll text you in a little bit. I'll call you, tomorrow and let you and wrap to you further, bro.
Yes, sir.
Thanks, man. Have a good night, Dr. Obari.
You too, bro.
All right, now.
All right.
All right, folks. That was Dr. Obari Cartman, man. I don't think you guys understand. That was big to me to have Sean be able to have that conversation with him. I've been following him in his work for some time now. Throughout the weeks, I'm gonna try to do some more random interviews like that. I have a few dope interviews lined up. If I haven't reached back out to you yet to set the date, don't worry. That time is coming. I got bombarded last week with some personal things. But yeah, get back to the games, get back to enjoying your Sunday, get ready for Monday, man. I'll see y'all tomorrow on Loquacious Thinkers. I'm in the bathroom at 8:30 p.m. All right, have a good night. Thanks, Beauty.